Live streaming on YouTube. Mic check. Getting started in just a second. All right. There we go. All right. Welcome to the Technology Source Virtual Roundtable. You're in the right place. Coming at you live every 2 weeks with all kinds of good tech talk, technology leaders and different products and services. Welcome, and let me know where you are calling in from today. I see a lot of returning guests. Thank you for coming back. I commend you for taking this time out of your busy work week to fill your brains with new ideas and learn from technology leaders. Let me know where you're dialing in from. You can use the Q&A box. For whatever reason, the chat box seems disabled. So if you want to say hi, please do. We love to hear from you. Hi, Diane. Good to have you. Good morning, good afternoon. Hello, Harry. Hi, Jay. Hi, Jay in Central Florida. Good to have you. Hi, John. You're back again. Good to see you. John B. Hello, John P. Good to see you. Hi, Cal in Northern California. Beautiful sunny day up here in Northern Cal. Glad to have you. Hello, Diane. Good to see you. Welcome from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Welcome, welcome. All right. Hi, Jenny. Good to see you again. Hi, Matt and Matt and Matt. We have 3 Matts. You're all awesome. Good to see you. Hi, Robert and Theo. Hello, Will. Good to have you. Hi, Alex. Hi, Alyssa. Hi, Brian. All right, we're going to get started. Thanks for all the hellos and shout outs. Hi, Matt in Tampa. Good to have you. My name is Sonia Moline. For those of you who don't know me, I am the Chief Information Officer at Technology Source. Been with this organization for 3 years. And prior to that, I was a Chief Marketing and Sales Officer at a cloud computing company called Effortless Office. And we did a lot of cybersecurity planning and preparation for our clients there. And then prior to that, in the healthcare space, serving a mid-sized healthcare company and helping protect PHI and PII and all of our doctors and all of our patients from data breaches and all that good stuff. And then prior to that, I was in the Navy. So US military for 4 years. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit today is the military and how the US military plays a part in today's cybersecurity landscape, and how it, the veterans transition over into this field. I'm hoping that you'll walk away with, we've made the case for hiring veterans in your organization, or, if you're an advisor or a consultant or an MSP on today's call, why you should work with veterans and veteran-owned organizations, how they can help you with your strategy, with your planning, with your clients, and for the customers, how you can, work with these types of organizations that are veteran-owned. Also, I see we have some, vets on today's call who may be in cybersecurity, who may be looking for a new career path. There may be some active duty. There's some of you, I don't even know who you are, so welcome. So we're happy to have you. And today we have some special guest speakers. I would love to introduce them, but before I do that, I want to let everyone know you can reach out during this event by typing in the chat. If you're on YouTube, you can type in the chat there, and we will do our best to respond to your questions in real time. That's why it's called a roundtable. We want to hear from you as well as our panelists. To show you how serious we are about wanting to hear your questions, we are offering, in fact, Blue Team Alpha brought to the table today a $50 Visa gift card. You can use that anywhere where there's a Visa, that anyone that takes Visa. And so all you have to do is ask a good question, and you know the drill. If you've been on my events before, we will put your name into the hat, and then at the very end, we will draw, hopefully, your name. So all you got to do is ask good questions. And we've got a lot of ground to cover today, so we'll jump right in. So let me start by introducing our panelists. I will start from my top left over here and kind of go that way. So we have Joe Kingland from Blue Team Alpha. He is the managing partner and chief executive officer. As an ardent supporter of American small businesses, Kingland believes all companies, regardless of size, deserve to have proficient cyber defenses and cyber resiliencies. As the chief executive officer of Blue Team Alpha, Kingland leads the brand in its mission to defend American businesses from cyber attacks. He puts his beliefs into action, ensuring even small companies are armed with the resources, tools, and skills to protect against cyber criminals and to respond swiftly and effectively in the event of an attack. Kingland served active duty in the United States Submarine Force with the Navy, go Navy, as the lead information systems administrator and sound silencing officer on the USS Pennsylvania. And he is calling in today from his home in Minneapolis. Would you like to say good afternoon to our audience here today?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for having us on, and yeah, really excited to talk about veterans in cybersecurity. Yeah, this is going to be a really fun conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, I knew you guys were passionate about it, and it's something I'm passionate about, and I'm just like, why aren't we doing this sooner? So Veterans Week, Veterans Day in November seemed like a perfect time. So thanks for jumping right in there in the conversation with us and putting your team's time and energy behind this. In my bottom left corner here, I have Max Aulick. He is the CEO and founder of Ignite Assurance Platform. He is recognized for his expertise in automating all aspects of DoD and commercial cyber compliance issues. He gained his start in security in the United States Air Force security leader during Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom, where he built his first-of-a-kind cyber readiness inspection automation capability to identify and analyze vulnerabilities and threats to mission-critical systems supporting the military. He went out and started several cybersecurity products and formed different companies, including his latest venture, Ignite Assurance. He is a business leader who also is a technical practitioner. Max is routinely sought after for his advice and input in meeting complex cyber federal regulations, and he has presented at many major cybersecurity conferences. We're excited to have you, Max.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sonia. I just wanted to thank you for having me with Joseph and Dan, but I'm excited. I'm here to support the cause, and anybody who is a veteran on this call or thinking about hiring veterans, we're all ears. We want to help you hire more veterans. So very nice to meet everybody. And thank you so much, Sonia, for having me.
Awesome. And you're calling in today from Dayton, Ohio. Chilly cold.
Yes. Extremely cold.
Just like Minneapolis. Well, maybe not exactly, but cold. All right. And then mysterious gentleman over here to my bottom right. This is he's actually quite fun and great to talk with. This is Mr. Dan Wolford, also with Blue Team Alpha as a Chief Information Security Officer. And before joining Blue Team Alpha as the CISO, Dan was the head of the Joint Cyber Intelligence for the United States Military Training Mission under U.S. Code Title 22 of Diplomatic Affairs. Dan retired from the United States Air Force Space Command Cyber Warfare Wing in 2015 as the officer in charge of threat intelligence. He holds a bachelor's in computer science, master's in cybersecurity, CEH, CISSP, and a lifetime membership to the VFW. That's awesome. Good to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us, Dan.
Howdy, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, howdy in San Antonio, Texas, and thank you for joining us. So we're covering many corners of the globe here of the United States, and so I'm in Northern California, and I'm excited to kind of kick this conversation off. So let's start with, how did you get here? I don't want the we want the Reader's Digest version, but let me know kind of how you ended up in the military, and then how that career experience has parlayed over into what you're doing now. Let's start with, how about Joseph?
Sure, sounds good. Well, I joined the Navy right after 9/11. So I was working in banks, installing networks and doing more infrastructure type work at that time when the 9/11 attack happened. I was actually watching it on a little TV in the basement of a bank as I was setting up servers and running cables and such. So that prompted me really quickly to join the service and And so I went into the Navy right after that. And the transition, from submarine service really went well, just because a lot of the discipline that you learn, the sense of duty that you get, and understanding goals and missions has translated very, very well into the business realm for us anyway. So being able to focus on specific problems and solve them is a lot of what I did in the Navy and in the submarine force. But then taking that out to the actual private sector was really beneficial. So it set me up for success. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Max, how about you?
So I migrated here. America is like my second country. I moved here from India when I was a teenager. I had a mentor, and he was a chief in the Air Force at that time. And when 9/11 happened, I was in high school, my last year, and he said, "Hey, you should serve your country." I hadn't even gotten my citizenship yet. And I didn't know what I was getting into. It was a blessing. 9/11 had happened, and I had a mentor that was guiding me. I joined a career field called Security Forces. For those of you who don't know, that's almost like an MP, military police officer, joined as an enlisted person. And then my career took me to Iraq and Afghanistan. I spent 4 years there. I got back, and then I eventually got hired here at Wright-Patterson at NASIC doing intelligence work. So it was a complete unplanned, but a wonderful blessing to serve in the military as a first generation American, and then end up starting my own company, doing really well. And the second company not doing so well. And this is about my third venture, which is doing fantastic. And I would say I take a lot of lessons that I learned, the discipline, the structure, and the servant leadership that we were taught as enlisted members in the military, and just applying that to our normal business. So that's my quick story. But there's a way we can take almost every career field in the military and apply it to cybersecurity and also to leadership. So that's my story. Totally unrelated to cyber. Was doing physical security. Somehow I've been blessed to just kind of transition over the last decade into a cyber leader.
That's great. And what about you, Dan?
Yeah, so I think if I can do it, anybody can do it. Before I joined the military, I joined the summer of 2001, before 9/11. Before that, the only experience I had with computers is just playing video games, like the old Quake and Doom games, some Apple IIe, Oregon Trail games. But then I joined the military, and they pretty much put me on this career path. I didn't know what the future would be like because of the war was kicking off. I eventually did deploy to Baghdad. I was in Iraq for almost a year. And then I went back to the Middle East to do that diplomatic work that you mentioned in the beginning. But I didn't know this is where I would be. Once I got injured in Iraq and they told me that I was not fit for duty, I had to reevaluate what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And working in cybersecurity has definitely been a blessing, like Max said, and I'm grateful that the military gave me this opportunity. But I do think anybody is able to get into this career field, even if they're halfway through a different career. I think it's possible to switch and get into cybersecurity because there is such a great need, and it covers pretty much every aspect of life now. It somehow involves cyberspace as a domain. So I think it's very useful for people to consider this as a career, even if they make a change halfway through, because if I can do it, anybody can.
That's great. Very inspiring. Actually, all of you. I wasn't prepared to be so inspired, but this is awesome. I've been chatting with you all for a while now as we were gearing up for this panel. And one thing that was interesting to me is that all of you had these really great stories to get to where you're at. And it's awesome. So speaking of that, I do know we have some veterans that I think are sort of coming out of the military and transitioning over. So we're going to move into some more business questions pretty quickly here. But while we're on this topic of sort of the career path, can you just each of you talk about some of the best certifications that, and maybe like any degrees that you think are important for someone who's in this, phase of what's next for me?
So just speaking for myself, I could tell you what was helpful the most to me. And it was the fact that I started out as an economics major, and that is an art degree. And the military told me it was not good enough. I wanted to get a commission because I had enlisted. I wanted to become a commission officer. So they said, your degree is not good enough. We want you to go back to school and get a science degree. And they gave me a list, and it was like calculus, physics, math, computer science. So I said, hey, I know about computers. I play computer games. I'm going to try computer science. So that put me on that path where I learned about programming and I learned about operating systems and hardware. That was very useful for the rest of my career. I have used that knowledge almost daily. So I would say computer science or computer engineering, any of those degree plans are going to be very useful in cybersecurity. And then certificate wise, it was a requirement. The DoD has requirements for what you need to be certified on for any position. So if you go and look at those requirements, you can see that there's level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is the entry level, level 2 is the medium, and level 3 is the high management level. So for me, I had to get CompTIA Security Plus as an entry level certificate. That was very helpful. All of the topics that are covered under Security Plus were very relevant to cybersecurity. And then later on in my career, I went with the level 3 CISSP. After I had, about 10 years of experience, I spent a couple months studying for it. And then I used this military transition program to get some free training. And then they paid for the certification as well. And that program is called O2O, which I think you were going to share a link to that. It's a program that's done by Syracuse University called Onward to Opportunity. And I highly recommend it. It's available to veterans and active duty. And I also think it's available to spouses.
Yeah, and that's something you had some experience with too, right, Joe?
Yeah, well, and I think from the certification standpoint, depending on which route you want to go, definitely OSCP is kind of the gold standard from the pen testing. Certified ethical hacker is kind of what I would say a precursor to an OSCP. The CISSP is really is kind of the gold standard from the really the management GRC route. That's usually if you're going to go down the policy procedure, risk assessments, that kind of thing. CISSP is where you'd want to be. That's what most companies would require for any kind of a information security officer role. So that's a really really strong one to have. There are a lot of new certifications that are coming out though from ISC squared and some of these other bodies that are great certifications to have. So just take a look and they're starting to tailor them now a little bit more to what you want to do if you want to get more into risk and compliance versus more technical technical certifications. But for those that are transitioning out of the military, I highly recommend looking into the SkillBridge program, because the SkillBridge program will help bridge that transition for you. They help get you in contact with companies like ours, and you can actually do 6 months of OJT and to help build up your resume while you're transitioning out of service. So it's the last 6 months of your service, and you still continue to get paid by the military and everything. And then the companies like Max's company, our company, we'd be able to give you that resume building experience while you are transitioning. And of course, leverage our connections to help land you a job. Right. My personal experience coming out of the military was pretty rough. I had a job lined up in Newport, Rhode Island at Lockheed, and I was in Washington State, in Bangor, Washington, and they had to create the job for me. So they said, "Yep, we're creating the job. We got to create the rec, everything else." That was in March. I was slated to get out in July, and I was keeping in contact with them every month. They said, "Yep, we have the request in. We're just waiting for it to come back." July came and went. August came and went. Same thing. We're here. We've got a job for you. Just sit tight. Just sit a little longer. And about October, I was getting pretty antsy. Hadn't had a job in a few months, and I was enlisted, so not like I had a lot of cash reserves. So I just started moving across the country, and kind of ran out of money in Minnesota. So when on my way to Rhode Island, I called them. They said, "Yeah, not yet, but it's getting really close." So I got a job in Minnesota and rented an apartment in Minnesota. And then 2 weeks later, they called and said, "Yep, we're ready for you." I was like, "Your guys' timing's terrible." Like, I just got a job. I just rented an apartment. Can you help me get from Minnesota to Rhode Island? And, it was back and forth. And ultimately, I just ended up staying in Minnesota, which I love it here. So it's not all bad, but happy accident, I would say.
Yeah.
So the SkillBridge program is amazing because it takes a lot of that stress of, how do you get into that next step? It takes that stress away. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm personally extremely passionate about that program and helping people transition out of the military and help them find what's next. And that program is not just for cyber. They have everything. You can, it's any.
I see a blog post in our future to kind of talk about some of this stuff. So that's really good. And what about you, Max?
My story is very similar to Joe's. I got out at the heat of the recession in 2009, which what we're starting to see now. A lot of tech layoffs. I want to say, anybody that's listening, don't be discouraged by that. There's a lot of resources when you're in the military. I remember there was a software program called Skillsoft. Maybe they still have it. So if you have a CAC card, take advantage of that CAC card. That's number one. We had a CCAF. Finish up your 2-year degree as much as you can, because after this, you might start to go after certifications, higher education, depending on your GI Bill. So take advantage of what you have. I did my degree through American Military University. They're fantastic. They are pro-military. Obviously, they'll structure the program around your needs. And then there's if you're interested in the commercial side, Joseph is absolutely correct. There's the OSCP, the offensive, attack and defense. That's really fun. But I would say what we're seeing, we hire a lot of interns. That's the sexy part of cyber. Everybody just goes towards that without having fundamental knowledge. But then there's the whole management and risk side of the house. And if you're within the government side, there's this thing called the DoD 8570, which lays out some of the requirements that Dan was talking about, which has things like A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, the whole CompTIA path, then the CISSP. But I would say all in all, take advantage of the CAC card you have, take advantage of some of the internal training, finish that up, then go either education or on a certification chase, depending on the direction. The other thing we tell our interns that's very critical is balance your need to learn with the need to experiment. We hire people all the time that they have all the paper, but they're not able to execute. So from a business value perspective, I can't really task them to anything real. And that means you have not balanced one or the other. So experiment. You might be a pen testing guy or gal, but then when you do it, you might say, I'm really dispassionate about this. I really like software engineering. So within cyber, I've never seen people that say this is what I wanted to do and that's all they do their whole life. A lot of people get depth and breadth of experience over the next 10 to 15 years as they flesh out their career. So that would be my advice, is learn all you can internally and then start to apply it. Because on the internship side, you'll discover what you actually are passionate about, and then it'll just pull you.
Yeah. So here's a question, and Cal, I'm going to put your name in the hat, since you asked the question that we were all just answering, which was, what are some ways to get started in the cybersecurity industry? And so, but here's a question: does the military prepare you for your career in cybersecurity, and how does that differentiate from cyber operators that don't have a military background? Is there some advantage? I would say yes, but I would love to hear from you, gentlemen. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. There's a huge benefit to hiring former military personnel into cyber, and the base of that benefit is things that we care about in cyber are fundamentals that you learn in the military. Things like access control, discipline, and also that sense of mission, that sense of duty. Those are they're bigger ideas, bigger topics. There's just a lot of the inherent training that you get while you're in the military that translates into cyber extremely well. That people that just go to college, go out and get a degree and get some certifications, they don't have the right mindset. It's about a mindset in cyber, and you have to really care about the mission. You have to care about what you're doing, and then apply the fundamentals and be self-motivated. And that's a lot of what the core training that the military gives you allows you to bring into your job in cyber. So there are huge benefits. We look specifically for veterans because the core values align so well with our company's core values and our company's mission and what we do.
Yeah.
I'd like to add something to that too.
Go ahead.
Cybersecurity, the word security is only part of the picture. Really, this is cyber warfare, and American businesses are under attack. There are foreign adversaries, not just cyber criminals, but other nation states that are attacking American companies, trying to steal money, trying to steal intelligence, trying to plant spies, for espionage. So the military understands that war fighter frame of mind a lot better because they've lived it, especially people who've deployed. They know what it's like to be in a war zone. And now cyberspace is just another domain of warfare. So military definitely has a leg up. Not to say you can't learn those skills as a civilian. I've worked with a lot of great civilians. Even when I was deployed, there were civilians, right? There's government civilians, but also contractors. So they understand it as well. So I wouldn't say it's unique only to the military, but the military does just have that baked in, where as a civilian, you have to work a little harder to get that frame of mind for cyber warfare.
Yeah. Question for you, Max, from John B, as in Bravo, in our audience. John wants to know what the most important concepts from physical security are that should be applied to cybersecurity. Great question, John. Thank you.
Awesome, John. Thank you for asking that question. So pervasively, what Joseph and Dan said about values is important. So as an airman, we had integrity for service before self, excellence in all we do. That is like pervasive throughout all all the different DoD components. So as a an MP or as a security forces member, and also not even as a security forces member, you do learn things like what is OPSEC, what is COMSEC. We talk about these things while we're in the military. We talk about a clearance, unclassified versus classified. That we call that a data classification policy, on the commercial side of the house. So, so you're going to learn bits and pieces in the military. We just use a different vernacular on the commercial side. So you're already trained. You just don't know how to communicate about it. So it's great to learn that translation between what the military calls how we operate versus what the civilian sector or the commercial side may call it. From a physical security standpoint, when I was going through it, almost everything that we learned, defense in depth, gate guards, dogs, and cordons, all of those things are very much applicable on the network. We're talking about perimeter security. We're talking about layered information defense. But the vernacular and the engineering that goes behind it, that's where you're gonna have to learn. The other thing I will say about physical security or just coming out of the military into the commercial side is, as an enlisted guy, this was my weakness. I always looked for instructions or directions, because in the military, as enlisted personnel, you have, at least in the Air Force instructions, AFIs. When you get into the commercial side, there are no AFIs. There's no instructions. You have to intuitively create or ask. So one of the things that I would say is, if you're a veteran, you've been in, you're going to have to break out of that institutionalized habit of expecting that there is some written instructions and going into a bit of a proactive learning mode until you just get used to it. So that's I wanted to tie that in, because core values are important. Everything you're learning in physical security is super important, but realize when you jump out, there are no instructions. There's nothing available. And we kind of have to either build it or learn on how to operate.
I'd love to add on to this if I can.
Yeah.
If you think about physical security, there are things that you're trying to protect, right, from everyone else. There are, whatever the gold in Fort Knox, or the packages that are, people that are being protected by physical security. So I would say the things that really are applicable from a physical security standpoint into cyber are things like access control, perimeter security, like Max said, defense in depth, having multiple layers, and people only get to the layer that they need to get to do their jobs. And also surveillance and monitoring. In a physical security world, you have security cameras and people that are watching those security cameras and those kinds of things. In the cyber world, we have security operations centers that collect information coming from all of the computer systems, and there are people and systems that are looking for anomalies, looking for things that are wrong. Just like in the physical world, what's that person doing in that room? I don't know how they got there, and they don't look right to me. We do the same thing in the security world. And a lot of people start their cyber careers in security operations centers looking for those anomalies, and then trying to track down those anomalies and tie them to an event.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great.
I would like to add one more thing to that, if we can. At two different secure facilities, I was in charge of physical and digital security, and I did see something. There was a common theme between both teams, because I had teams of security guards, security officers, but also cybersecurity analysts and engineers. This common theme was a gut instinct, I will say. On the physical security side, you have people that are monitoring cameras and surveillance, and they're doing rounds. They're walking through the building. They're looking at visitors. They're looking at entry points and exit points, and looking at people's ID card badging in, right? Well, they have something inside of them that gives them a heightened level of awareness where they can detect that something is suspicious. And that's hard to train for. I think that's a certain type of person that is just aware of their environment. And there is some training involved, but it just requires someone to be skeptical and kind of have a zero trust philosophy. Like, yes, you're here. Yes, you're wearing the right uniform, but something feels wrong. Something's wrong here. I don't know what it is, but I need to investigate. That same type of mentality works in cybersecurity. because you're doing surveillance, you're monitoring activity, you're looking for the anomalies, the suspicious activity that you need to investigate. And that's hard to train for. But if you have that just naturally as a person where, you're able to have a gut feeling that something is off, you're just not sure what it is, that translates really well between physical security and digital security.
Yeah.
Probably comes with a lot of hours on watch too.
Yes. Knowing the environment, the longer, this is one of the benefits of having a security team for a long period of time, because they understand the environment. They know what is normal for their environment on both sides, cyber and physical. They know it's normal for their environment. So when something is off or strange or unusual or suspicious, they're going to find it faster than anyone else, because they know what's normal and what's not.
Yeah. Yeah, so I see several new people in our audience here. Thank you for those of you who are just joining us. We have that was Dan Wolford, Joe Kingland, and Max Aulick. They're all veterans from the military, along with myself, and we are talking about how veterans, transfer over into cybersecurity leadership and how that process works. And now we're going to kind of talk a little. We made the case for why veterans might make a good choice for your cybersecurity plans. But now let's also talk about from a business standpoint. I know we have a lot of organizations on today's call who are, IT leaders. They're maybe outsourcing. They're looking for, who do I go to? What are the best practitioners out there? So let's go into some questions about that. And remember, audience, we are taking good questions. We have a $50 giveaway on the line, so please ask good questions. If you think of anything to ask these panelists, we'd love to hear from you. So we're about halfway through, a little over halfway through, so we got about 20 minutes left. What are some of the best sources of threat intel, and do you use those, and how do you protect your customers from threats? Let's go with Dan. Yeah.
So threat intelligence is something that I've been doing professionally for a number of years, and I will say there are two types. You have open source and closed source. So, if you're already working for the government and you're already working in law enforcement, or even at a private company, you have closed source intelligence. So all of the work that you have, all of this intelligence you have access to because of where you work, and it's not available to the public, that's closed. And, you can use it, but you're limited on who you can share it with. Open source, there's a lot of value there, and it comes from the internet, it comes from social media, it comes from these different groups that put information sharing together, like the MISP platform, MISP, for malware information. So they're both equally good, but you're just limited on what you can share when it's closed. And then stuff that's open, it's for everybody. So if you're not looking at open source, you're missing out on a huge collection of information and intelligence that exists out there in the world. I like to use a tool called INO Reader. It's just an RSS aggregator, but people can post different articles. That lets me get through a couple hundred of these open source articles a day and just try to see what's happening, where are the trends, what are the new exploits, what are people talking about. And, you also want to look at places like Reddit or Twitter and LinkedIn. Some people have Slack groups where they share information, and just being out there, being aware that information, it can come from any source. So, you want to look at it all as much as you can.
Yeah, you don't have to pay for it. That's, you can. There are services that will provide a lot of really good threat intel, but you don't have to pay for it. A lot of it is out there, as Dan just explained, and he's definitely the right person to answer that question.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll add to that, I think this is important, is because there's so much sources of information. There's quite a few. It's mind-blowing. One of the things we track is at the protocol level, how do we get that information, structure it, turn it into just random threats to actual applied knowledge. So we use something internally called a Styx and a Taxi server. For anybody that's technical, that really wants to dive deep into it, that's a protocol that the government, Dan talked about closed sources. So it stands for Structured Threat Information Exchange. If you set that up, there's a lot of subscribers to that, and also people that like to send information. So that's what we try to use, but there's literally thousands of threat intel sources out there, depending on what you're focused on, right? If you're focused on satellites, there's probably a whole rush of satellite information. If you're focusing on botnets, there's probably a Zeus network that's focused on that. So I would really narrow down on the Pacific type of intelligence, and there's probably 5 to 6 sources for that particular type of threat that you're trying to manage.
Yeah, that brings up a good point, Max, is also everybody has a different, every organization is defending from different types of threats. There's a lot of shared threat out there, but there's a lot of also really targeted threats. And so, looking into those types of resources, specifically for whichever type of threats you would be most exposed to. And so is there along those lines, at Blue Team Alpha, let's just say, do you have clients in specific industries like healthcare or finance or things like that, where they have specific regulations that they need to meet? They have specific types of data that's sought after by certain types of criminals, or how does that play out with your clients?
So I'll let Joseph speak to the Blue Team side, but for Ignite, we have customers in almost every vertical. So healthcare, financial services, to the defense industrial base. And each one of these verticals has different types of threat information, different types of regulations. So if I'm attacking, if I'm trying to protect a credit union with financial services, you're going to look for ERP systems that Jack Henry's, which is a ERP type of system, financial system that would wreak havoc on that side, versus defense industrial base. People are really worried about CUI, controlled unclassified information. So for us, when we verticalize, then we start to apply solutioning and threat management. Our customers like that, and that's really when you start to find what is of relevant from the sea of noise out there. Joseph, how about you? What do you guys see in terms of how are you guys managing, since you guys are really on the front lines of some of this stuff?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of what Dan actually does is provide threat intelligence for us to give us the most accurate and recent data that he's saying from the chatter out there. But when it comes to different industries and verticals, we're fairly similar. The attackers, while they have their preferred victims,
targets,
they just attack everyone. So we see everything, healthcare, manufacturing, Department of Defense, manufacturing, that defense base that you were talking about, financial institutions, to just professional services firms, CPAs, legal, so it's kind of all over the map. But we in turn become a source of intelligence as well. We can perform a little bit of recon and counterintelligence on the attacking groups, and we can see what's not being actually talked about yet because we're seeing it happen in real time as we're going through and investigating threats. And for us anyway, that's really it's really fantastic, because we can take what we're seeing in incidents that we're working right now and apply defensive countermeasures and protections to the rest of our customer base immediately. It goes basically across the hall. It goes from one team to the other team. But you're right, Max. You've got to figure out what's the company trying to protect. What are the crown jewels of the company, and what are the damages and the risks that would happen if those go out the door, and then start wrapping your head around how to defend for those those attacks, and put the right things in the keep of the castle, right? So that's that you do have to classify it. Not everybody's the same. And, you know, in manufacturing in particular, their IP is, you know, almost the most important thing besides keeping the production line running, you know, and you know, those two items, you've really got to focus in on where those are. And every industry has that, you know, healthcare, PHI, you know, keep people healthy, right? Make sure that they can provide the services to patients. Every industry's got these critical things. And one of the things that we really focus on when we engage with our customers is understanding what those things are, doing a, you know, some kind of a BIA, you know, business impact analysis, or a very, very fast one in an incident, right? We call it a mini BIA. It goes something like this: tell me the top 3 things that are going to save your business tomorrow, and we're going to focus on those first, right? That's as simple as that gets. And then as we talk through the people, processes, and the technology that it's required, then we can really focus in on that in those engagements. But we would much rather have those conversations not in the line of fire. So
yeah, I've shared a story a few times on this virtual roundtable about a BIA that was in progress that took like a year, and then unfortunately the organization got hacked, and it was a very public hack because it was a county. It was a county healthcare administrator, and it was really bad. And I was there in the wings going like, but why didn't you move forward with what I was trying to recommend? Come on, like I'm throwing you a lifeline and you're just like throwing it on the ground. And so it's so
Sonia,
hard.
if I had a nickel, I tell you, every time they're like, oh, we were doing something about this.
You know, we did this conference around veterans because it's, you know, it's super important, but I thought of another conference that could have been done over Halloween, like, you know, and I think I even saw it on your like horror stories or something like that. Was that something you guys had done too? Yeah. But there's so many, it's so scary, like what our clients have had to go through. And, you know, a lot of it is like, so I guess maybe that's a question I have for my panelists here today is how do you convince leadership when you're working with an organization of, you know, because I know everyone on this call today, we all have different roles. We all answer to somebody, even if you're the CEO or you're the board of directors, you know, you got to convince. You can't just work in a silo. You got to convince, you got to bring people along with you. And so how do we convince those people that are still on the fence of like, oh, cybersecurity, you know, like
There's
go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
Two ways to do it. One is if they have a breach or they have an incident, it's immediately easier to try to convince them the value of security. That's number one. I hate that way. That's just the reality of it. The second way I like better. So as CISO Blue Team Alpha, I'm also a virtual CISO to our customers as an advisor. And what I like to do is get into the environment before they get breached, before they have an incident. I'm able to do analysis of their security program and find the gaps. You know, and the way that I like to do it, every environment is different, but there are some fundamentals that apply to all businesses just coast to coast. That's the cyber hygiene, you know, the basics. If they don't have some compliance framework that they want me to work with, I usually recommend the CIS, and I'll share a link with this to everybody. So that's the Center for Internet Security. They have 3 different implementation groups, they call it. And those are all of the security controls that you need to do at a very minimum. That, you know, implementation group 1 is cyber hygiene, the very basics that everybody needs to do. So if the company doesn't know what framework they want to use, that's the one I'm going to recommend. And then the part 2 to that. So you have a compliance framework, but part 2 is you have to map that to risk, and you have to do it with quantitative analysis. You have to map the cost of the security control to how much it would cost to recover from a successful attack. You have to speak in business terms with how much it's going to cost in dollars. That's the best way to get that leadership buy-in, because now you're speaking a language they understand.
It's all about the money.
Yeah.
So and once you put it into that form, into dollars by risk, then it's much easier for CFOs and boards and CEOs to gauge how much they want to spend to mitigate that risk, right? And that's really how you set a cybersecurity budget in the first place. You have to kind of do that quantitative, not qualitative, quantitative budget analysis to understand, how much should you be spending? Some companies spend too much, or they don't spend it appropriately. And that's, we see that fairly often. It's, you're spending a lot of money, but it's in the wrong areas.
And putting on my compliance officer hat, I'm CHC compliance certified by the HCCA. So in healthcare compliance and, CMMC compliance and all these different kinds of compliance, they also make it so that organizations have to move forward with these types of regulations. So if you don't want to do it, doesn't matter, you have to do it in order to remain open. And so let's talk about that, Max. Tell me a little bit about some compliance regulations that are already surfaced, and how do clients meet those regulations?
So the question of value will always come up in cyber. If things are going well, they don't want it. If things are not going well, they've got to spend it, right? So when a market fails, in the United States, at least the government jumps in and tries to address it. And in cybersecurity, everybody really does not like compliance. We intuitively understand that those are two separate, different activities. But over the last decade, we have seen that regulations are increasing in almost every vertical that doesn't have any. People don't really care for security unless there's a breach or some negative event that has happened. So when we look at question of value, how much is enough, we do tie it back to flow down requirements, is what we call it in the DoD. So if you have a contract in healthcare, you're most likely either a covered entity or business associate. If you're in defense industrial base, you're most likely having to comply with DFARS. If you're in financial services, you've got FFIEC and the NCUA for the credit unions. So each vertical has a regulator. And what we have observed over the last decade, as much as we hate regulatory enforcement, the vertical that does not have regulatory enforcement in the United States, they tend to be really far behind on their protection scheme, and even the level of security that they want to consume. Manufacturing comes to mind. It's a broad generality, but manufacturing, when you go there, you're not going to find the hottest cybersecurity professionals and the latest technologies. But if you go to financial services and DoD, you will, because it's a high regulatory environment. So the question of value, once nothing is happening, they'll get rid of cyber professionals. I've seen that. But as soon as something starts to happen, we saw that even with the Sony breach. It's like, why would you get rid of your most experienced war fighters that have gone through it, but they cleaned the house, right? So for us, we see FedRAMP emerging, we see CMMC emerging, and we see, this thing called the SBOM, Software Bill of Material, which is tied to another executive order. Because of all of the different attacks and things that are happening, the government doesn't know what to do. So they can only regulate, right? So we're seeing an uptick in almost every single vertical. Every single regulatory enforcement agency is thinking about how do we control, how do we manage, how do we report, how do we understand, how do we incentivize, how do we give out grants? And so that's just from our perspective in terms of talking to the leadership. It becomes a chief legal officer conversation, no longer which is sad. It no longer becomes a technology conversation.
Yeah, a graphic comes to mind. One of our team members, he's probably on the call, Alex Tietze, showed me this graphic, but it was 3 jars, and it said cybersecurity spending, and the first jar is before a breach, and there's like 4 coins in the jar, and then there's the second jar is during the breach, and the jar is overflowing with coins. It's money coming out of everywhere. And then the third jar is after a breach. And again, there's back to like 4 coins in the jar. And unfortunately, that's really what's happening. That's, unless somebody is forcing the organization to spend the money, they are not spending the money to really shore up their defenses. I actually go a different route. I think that many companies in America can actually use cybersecurity as a differentiator for their business. Many of them, if they implement a strong security program, maybe they go out and they get, maybe one of the, like a SOC 2 certificate or something to just kind of show it. But you can use that as a differentiator for your business against your competition, why you are better. If you're a bank, right, and you really take security seriously and you market it, right, you put the effort behind it, create a great security program, get monitoring in place, all that good stuff, and then you use that in your marketing materials, you can actually start to win more business. If you want to go into a new area of business and that is regulated, that will make that transition easier for you. If you want to start chasing customers that require certain certifications, that'll make that a lot easier for you if you want to go and do that and expand your customer base into a new area, a new vertical. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there in taking cybersecurity and instead of making it just this thing that you spend money on and you don't perceive any value out of it, actually take that, leverage it, and start to use it to your advantage.
Yeah, I've seen that with a national pharmacy brand that was a customer, still a customer, and was trying to get bigger contracts with different payers and having a hard time. And then when they made some changes to their cybersecurity posture and infrastructure and maturity, they were able to go forward and get some really great contracts, all just based on that. So there's a lot of money to be made with increasing your maturity in cybersecurity. And I think that's, more and more obvious for a lot of businesses. I still think, I still run up against some smaller, organizations that haven't quite realized that yet. And they're just looking at the cost without looking at, can't see the forest through the trees kind of thing. But no, these were great. I loved each of your answers, and we're running up towards the end of our time. I could go on for another hour. This was so good. I loved hearing from all of you and each of your unique experiences and how that's brought you here to today. Thank you all for where you've come from and how you've gotten here to this day, and for sharing the insight that you have with emerging people who are coming into their career, and whether they're veterans or not. I love that we can all learn from this career paths that each of you have taken. This will be live on YouTube. It is live on YouTube, but it will live on in perpetuity on YouTube, so that we can send this out to vets if anybody knows any that are looking for some motivation on joining the cybersecurity. I'm really passionate about young girls and helping them find cybersecurity and tech and the tech path. So we started at Technology Source the Techie Toy Drive, which we do every year, which gives back to foster care, kinship, and kids and those techie toys. We say they're equally to be distributed amongst all genders. Not just the laptops go to the boys and the dolls go to the girls, right? So that's just another one. But it's good work that we're doing, and I commend each of you on this call and all of those people in the audience who hopefully you'll have some good takeaways. And we do have just a couple people in our drawing here. Let's see, only had 2, so that's okay. There were a lot of questions that were being answered. Dan was over there typing away.
That sounds right.
This one is John B. John B as in Bravo. So congratulations, John. You are the winner of the $50 gift card. And so we will get that out to you right away. And thank you to Dan, Max, and Joseph. It was great to have you on. We want to learn more about your companies too, so hopefully we can bring you back on again and you can meet with our clients. If you have any questions for Dan or Joe or Max, or want to meet with our companies and are considering working with one of these awesome gentlemen and their organizations, please reach out to us. Reach out to the technology advisor or the partner who advised you to be here today, and we would love to get you those meetings set up. That's all I got. We'll be taking next week off for Thanksgiving, so enjoy time with your friends and your families, and we will be back. So we're going to be skipping 2 weeks. We'll be back in December 6th will be our next, or somewhere around there. We'll send out an invite, and that will be with Uma. Uma will be coming in and talking about some communications and how to unify your communications throughout your organization. So have a great rest of your day, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Alpha. Thank you. Thanks, Ignacio.